Did you know the comedy classic B.A.P.S. featured an Oscar winner disco dancing, a screenwriter so devastated by changes to her script that she vowed never to let it happen again, and hair so tall it literally blocked movie screens? From bizarre continuity errors to tragic real-life endings, this 1997 cult phenomenon hides secrets more outrageous than anything Nisi and Mickey could dream up. Fact 1. Roger Ebert's zero-star nuclear option. When it comes to movie critics, few wielded more power in 1997 than Roger Ebert and his television partner Gene Siskel, but their response to B.A.P.S. was nothing short of brutal. Both legendary critics delivered the harshest possible verdict by awarding the film 0 stars out of 4, a rating so rare that it was reserved for only the most catastrophic cinematic failures. Ebert didn't just dislike the movie, he absolutely despised it, calling B.A.P.S. jaw-droppingly bad and stupid. A movie so misconceived, I wonder why anyone involved wanted to make it. The Chicago Sun-Times critic went even further by placing B.A.P.S. on his infamous most hated list, a distinction that put it alongside some of the worst films ever made. Meanwhile, Siskel was equally merciless, describing the comedy as an embarrassing comedy, and noting that Martin Landau looked very uncomfortable in a ridiculous role. He concluded that the two women play into shameless stereotypes in a film without a single laugh, essentially declaring the entire project a complete waste of everyone's time. What made their reviews particularly devastating was how personal they became. Ebert wrote that his guess was, "African Americans will be offended by the movie, and whites will be embarrassed, predicting that the movie will bring us all together, I imagine, in paralyzing boredom." These weren't just negative reviews, they were complete demolitions that questioned the very existence of the film. The fact that both critics independently arrived at 0 stars without consulting each other showed just how universally terrible they found Robert Townsend's comedy to be, making their synchronized hatred one of the most memorable critical beatdowns in movie history. Fact 2. The screenwriter's devastating betrayal. Troy Beyer experienced one of the most heartbreaking betrayals a writer can face when she watched her very first screenplay get completely transformed during production without her consent. B.A.P.S. was supposed to be Bayer's big break into Hollywood screenwriting, but what she saw on the big screen bore little resemblance to the story she had originally written. The experience was so traumatic that she later told IndieWire in 1998, "When I saw the final cut, I was so devastated because I really believed that my words had not honestly made it onto the screen." The problem arose because director Robert Townsend, who was known for writing and directing his own films like Hollywood Shuffle, had never before directed someone else's screenplay. According to Beyer, the director was a writer-director himself, and it was the first time he had directed someone else's writing. He took the liberty of changing stuff as he shot the film. These unauthorized changes happened during filming, meaning Beyer had no way to stop them or even know about them until she sat in a theater watching the finished movie. The betrayal cut so deeply that Beyer admitted, "At the end of the day, when I saw the film, I hated it. I was really embarrassed, and it was too late for me to take my name off the picture." But instead of letting the experience destroy her career, she turned her anger into determination. Beyer made a bold decision to use every penny she earned from B.A.P.S. to fund her next project, declaring, "I'm going to take the money from this awful experience and put it into my own film. I'm going to direct it and make sure my words make it to the screen." True to her word, she wrote, directed and starred in Let's Talk About Sex in 1998, ensuring she would never again lose control of her vision. Fact 3. Halle Berry's divorce therapy movie. While Halle Berry was transforming herself into the outrageous character of Nisi on the B.A.P.S. set, she was simultaneously going through one of the most difficult periods of her personal life. Berry was in the middle of a very public and painful divorce from baseball star David Justice, whom she had married on New Year's Day in 1993 after he became a fan, and got her phone number through a reporter. The couple had separated in February of 1996, just as Berry was preparing to film B.A.P.S., and their divorce wouldn't be finalized until June of 1997. The timing couldn't have been more challenging for Barry, who later revealed that the breakup had left her so devastated that she had even considered taking her own life during this dark period. However, rather than letting her personal struggles derail her career, Barry found that throwing herself into the completely over-the-top role of Nisi actually became a form of therapeutic escape. She later acknowledged that working on B.A.P.S. helped her cope with the depression she was experiencing from the very public split with Justice. The irony wasn't lost on anyone that Barry, who was known for her elegant and sophisticated public image, was spending her days on set wearing towering wigs, gold teeth, and outrageous outfits while dealing with tabloid coverage of her crumbling marriage. Director Robert Townsend noted that Barry was incredibly professional throughout the filming process, and her commitment to the comedic role showed a completely different side of her acting abilities. The physical comedy and wild character work required for B.A.P.S. provided Barry with a much-needed distraction from her personal pain, proving that sometimes the most unexpected roles can serve as the perfect medicine during life's toughest moments. Fact 4. Oscar winner goes disco dancing. Picture one of Hollywood's most distinguished character actors, fresh off winning an Academy Award for his haunting portrayal of Bela Lugosi in Tim Burton's Ed Wood, suddenly busting out disco moves on a dance floor. That's exactly what audiences witnessed when Martin Landau appeared in B.A.P.S., creating one of the most surreal moments in cinema history. Landau, who was 69 years old at the time and known for playing intense dramatic roles in films like North by Northwest and Crimes and Misdemeanors, found himself gyrating to disco music alongside Halle Berry and Natalie Desselle in a scene that left critics absolutely baffled. The disco dancing sequence was particularly jarring because Landau approached his role as the dying millionaire Mr. Blakemore with complete seriousness, treating the character with the same dignity and gravitas he brought to all his performances. This created a bizarre contrast when the script suddenly required him to hit the dance floor for a wild night out with the two young women. The scene becomes even more absurd when you consider the plot logic. Since Landau's character was supposedly on his deathbed throughout most of the movie, yet he somehow had enough energy to dance the night away. Roger Ebert, who was already unimpressed with the film, couldn't resist highlighting this particular moment in his scathing review. With his trademark wit, Ebert wrote, "You have not lived until you've seen Martin Landau disco." Well, perhaps you have. The critic's sarcastic observation perfectly captured how out of place the Academy Award winner looked, trying to keep up with the film's outrageous energy. Ebert also noted the medical inconsistency, pointing out that shortly before Landau's dreadful deathbed scene, the character was somehow well enough to join the women in a wild night of disco dancing, making the entire sequence feel even more ridiculous. Fact 5. The Dolomite Easter egg. Director Robert Townsend packed one of the cleverest inside jokes in movie history right into the opening scene of B.A.P.S., and most viewers probably missed it completely. The customer who Nisi serves in the very first diner scene and calls Nate is actually played by Rudy Ray Moore, a legendary figure in blaxploitation cinema who was best known for creating and starring as the character Dolomite in the 1975 film of the same name. Moore's Dolomite was a foul-mouthed, rhyme-spitting pimp who became an icon of 70s black exploitation movies, making him a perfect choice for this particular cameo. The brilliance of the casting becomes clear when Nate complains about his burned toast and starts acting difficult with the waitresses. Without missing a beat, Mickey turns to Nisi and delivers the perfect punchline, "Girl, don't pay him no mind. He thinks he's Dolomite." This line works on multiple levels because the audience is literally watching the real Dolomite actor being told he thinks he's Dolomite, creating a meta-joke that would have been especially hilarious to anyone familiar with Moore's most famous character. To make the Easter egg even more complete, Townsend added another subtle detail that sharp-eyed viewers might catch during the scene. If you look closely at Nate's uniform, you'll notice the name Patch reads N. Townsend, which is actually the director's own last name. This double-layered reference shows just how much thought went into what could have been a throwaway moment in the opening minutes of the film. Moore's appearance was a tribute to his impact on black cinema, and the self-referential joke about Dolomite demonstrated Townsend's respect for the blaxploitation genre that paved the way for filmmakers like himself to tell stories about black characters and culture in mainstream Hollywood. Fact 6. 2 hours of daily beauty torture. Every single day of filming, Halle Berry had to endure what can only be described as a complete physical transformation that took up to 2 hours in the makeup chair before she could even step foot on set. This wasn't just a quick touch-up of lipstick and powder. Berry was getting a full makeover that completely erased her natural beauty and replaced it with an over-the-top character look that was the polar opposite of everything she was known for. The process involved applying elaborate golden wigs, inserting gold teeth grills, creating dramatic eye makeup, and perfecting every detail of Nisi's outrageous appearance. Director Robert Townsend had specifically chosen Berry because he wanted to completely change the elegant, sophisticated image she had built throughout her career up to that point. Berry was already established as a serious actress and former beauty queen who was known for her refined, classic look, but Townsend wanted audiences to see her in a completely different light. The extensive daily makeup routine was essential to achieving this goal, as it transformed Berry from her naturally stunning self into a character that looked like she had stepped out of a completely different world. The transformation was so dramatic that Berry later admitted she had initial reservations about taking on the role, saying, "I didn't want to look stupid. I wanted to be funny." The 2-hour makeup process was crucial to helping her find the character, as the physical transformation allowed her to fully embrace Nisi's personality and mannerisms. Berry's makeup artist, Mary Burton, was specifically credited for her work on the star, while hair consultant Kimberly Kimball designed the special wigs that became such an iconic part of the character's look. The daily routine became so extensive that it essentially required Berry to wake up hours earlier than normal just to be ready for her first scene of each day. Fact 7. Plain hair blocks movie screen. One of the most absurd visual gags in B.A.P.S. happens during the airplane scene when Nisi and Mickey are flying from Georgia to Los Angeles, and their towering hairstyles literally become obstacles for other passengers trying to enjoy the in-flight entertainment. The actresses were wearing wigs that were piled so incredibly high on their heads that they created a physical barrier between the passengers sitting behind them and the movie screen at the front of the cabin. This wasn't just a slight inconvenience. The hairstyles were so massive that they completely blocked the view for anyone unfortunate enough to be seated directly behind the two women. The scene was designed to show just how out of place the characters were in this new environment, but it also created a practical comedy moment that Roger Ebert found particularly noteworthy in his review. He described how the film showed reaction shots of annoyed white businessmen asking to change their seats, which perfectly captured the culture clash that was central to the movie's premise. The passengers' frustrated reactions weren't just about the blocked view. They represented the broader discomfort that Nisi and Mickey's presence created in spaces where they clearly didn't fit in. What makes this scene even more memorable is that it demonstrates just how extreme the costume and hair design really was for this film. The hairstyles weren't just tall for comedic effect. They were so outrageously oversized that they became actual physical obstacles in real-world situations. The airplane sequence served multiple purposes in the story, showing the characters' journey from their small-town Georgia roots to the glamorous world of Los Angeles, while also providing a perfect visual metaphor for how their larger-than-life personalities would disrupt every space they entered. The blocked movie screen became a symbol of how Nisi and Mickey's presence would change everything around them, whether people were ready for it or not. Fact 8. The gold-tooth metal detector gag. One of the most memorable and ridiculous moments in B.A.P.S. happens when Nisi and Mickey arrive at their local Georgia nightclub called the Gold Tooth, and their dental accessories literally trigger the security equipment at the entrance. The scene plays out exactly as absurdly as it sounds when the two women approach the metal detectors that guard the club's entrance. They confidently stride through without any concern, But the moment they flash their bright smiles at the security guards, the alarms immediately start blaring. The metal detectors are responding to the massive amount of gold that both characters have covering their teeth, creating a comedy moment that perfectly captures just how over-the-top their style really is. The gag works on multiple levels because it shows off what one viewer described as their full array of gold caps, which cover not just their front teeth, but extend to their side teeth as well. The gold dental work was such an integral part of both characters' looks that it literally contained enough metal to set off electronic security devices, turning their smiles into walking alarm systems. This scene also cleverly plays with the name of the nightclub itself, since the Gold Tooth is exactly the kind of establishment where characters like Nisi and Mickey would feel completely at home, surrounded by people who shared their love of flashy gold accessories. The metal detector moment became one of the film's most quoted and remembered scenes, representing everything that made B.A.P.S. so outrageous and memorable to audiences. It was exactly the kind of physical comedy that made viewers either laugh out loud or cringe with embarrassment, depending on their perspective. The scene also demonstrated the attention to detail that went into creating the characters' looks, since the gold teeth weren't just a visual element, but actually became a plot point that created real consequences in the story. Fact 9. Clock stands still for 5 minutes. In what has to be one of the most glaring continuity errors in movie history, the opening bar scene in B.A.P.S. features a wall clock that completely defies the laws of time and physics by remaining frozen at exactly 9:25 for approximately 5 minutes of actual screen time. This isn't a subtle mistake that only the most eagle-eyed viewers would catch. It's a blatant error that anyone paying attention to the background details would notice, since the clock appears multiple times throughout the scene and never moves from that exact position despite all the action and dialogue happening around it. The error is particularly noticeable because the bar scene is quite lengthy and involves several different conversations and interactions between the characters, giving viewers plenty of opportunities to glance at the clock in the background and realize that something is seriously wrong with the passage of time. During these 5 minutes of screen time, the characters go through multiple exchanges, order drinks, discuss their plans, and generally behave as if normal time is passing, but the clock stubbornly refuses to acknowledge that any time has elapsed at all. What makes this continuity mistake even more puzzling is that it happens so early in the film, during a scene that would have been watched and reviewed multiple times during the editing process. Continuity errors like this usually occur when scenes are shot out of order over multiple days, and the props department fails to keep track of small details like clock positions between takes. However, the fact that this particular error made it all the way through post-production and into the final cut suggests that either nobody noticed the problem during editing, or the filmmakers decided it wasn't worth the time and expense to fix it. The frozen clock has since become a favorite detail for movie mistake enthusiasts and sharp-eyed fans who enjoy spotting production errors. Fact 10. Celebrity cameo overload. B.A.P.S. turned into an unexpected celebrity showcase, with director Robert Townsend managing to pack an impressive roster of famous faces into his comedy, ranging from established stars to people who would become household names years later. The film featured rapper and actor LL Cool J making an appearance, along with basketball superstar Dennis Rodman, who was at the height of his fame with the Chicago Bulls during the mid-90s. Heavy D, the popular rapper and actor who was known for hits like Now That We've Found Love, also showed up in the movie, adding to the film's hip-hop credibility and appeal to younger audiences. One of the most notable cameos came from Bernie Mac, who would later become a major comedy star with his own television show and roles in films like the Ocean's Trilogy, but at the time was still building his reputation as a stand-up comedian and character actor. Mac played a character called Mr. Johnson in the film, giving audiences an early glimpse of the comedic talent that would eventually make him one of the most beloved performers in entertainment. The casting of these celebrities wasn't just random star power. Many of them fit naturally into the world that Townsend was creating, especially since the story involved characters trying to break into the entertainment industry. Perhaps the most interesting cameo came from someone who nobody could have predicted would become famous in reality television years later. Carly Red, who would eventually become a major star on VH1's Love and Hip Hop, Atlanta, appeared in B.A.P.S. as an uncredited extra, working as a background performer long before she became known for her dramatic reality TV storylines. This casting choice shows how many aspiring entertainers were willing to take small roles in the film, hoping to get their foot in the door of the entertainment industry, even if it meant just being part of the background action. Fact 11. The 10 million disaster. From a pure financial standpoint, B.A.P.S. was an unmitigated disaster that lost money for everyone involved, earning back only $7.3 million worldwide against its $10 million production budget. This meant that the film failed to even recoup its basic production costs, let alone cover the additional millions that were likely spent on marketing, distribution, and theater rentals. In Hollywood terms, this kind of performance is considered a certified box office bomb, the type of failure that can derail careers and make studios think twice about greenlighting similar projects in the future. The financial failure was particularly disappointing because the film starred Halle Berry, who was already an established actress with a growing fan base, and featured the directing talents of Robert Townsend, who had previously found success with films like Hollywood Shuffle. The $10 million budget wasn't considered excessive for a comedy starring a known actress, but the poor box office performance meant that the film lost nearly $3 million before any additional costs were factored in. This kind of loss was especially painful for a smaller budget film that was supposed to be a relatively safe investment. What makes the financial failure even more remarkable is how completely it contradicted the film's later cultural impact and staying power. While B.A.P.S. was bombing in theaters during its initial release in March of 1997, it would eventually find new life on home video, cable television, and streaming platforms. The movie became what entertainment industry experts call a cult classic, beloved by audiences who discovered it outside of the traditional theater experience. This transformation from box office bomb to cultural phenomenon shows how sometimes a film's true value can't be measured by its opening weekend numbers, but rather by its ability to connect with audiences over time and become part of the cultural conversation for decades to come. Fact 12. Natalie Dessell's film debut secret. Long before Natalie Dessell became the breakout star of B.A.P.S., she was working a series of unusual jobs in Los Angeles, while desperately trying to get noticed by Hollywood casting directors and agents. After moving from Louisiana to pursue her acting dreams, Dessell quickly discovered that the entertainment industry wasn't exactly waiting for her arrival, and she needed to pay the bills while auditioning for roles that seemed impossible to land. Her job history during this struggling period reads like a comedy sketch itself, as she bounced between completely different types of work just to survive in one of the most expensive cities in America. Dessell started out working as a receptionist, which was a fairly typical job for aspiring actors since it usually offered regular hours and the possibility of meeting industry contacts. When that didn't provide enough income or opportunities, she took a job as a waitress at a soul food restaurant, which at least connected her to the kind of authentic cultural experience that would later inform her performance in B.A.P.S. However, the most surprising job in her pre-fame resume was working as a tank mechanic at McDonnell Douglas, the major aerospace and defense contractor that was known for building military aircraft and spacecraft. The tank mechanic position was about as far from the entertainment industry as anyone could get, requiring Dessell to learn technical skills and work in an industrial environment that had absolutely nothing to do with acting, comedy, or performance. This job showed just how determined she was to make it in Hollywood, since she was willing to take on physically demanding work that most aspiring actresses would never consider. Her varied work experience during this period actually helped her develop the authentic, working-class sensibility that made her performance as Mickey so believable and relatable to audiences who recognized the struggle of trying to make dreams come true while dealing with economic reality. Fact 13. The stage play that never was. In what should have been a triumphant return to one of her most beloved characters, Natalie Desselle was preparing to reprise her iconic role as Mickey in a live stage adaptation of B.A.P.S. that was originally scheduled to debut in May of 2020. The production was being developed by film producer and playwright Jakarius Johnson, who had already successfully adapted several other urban movies into stage plays, including Two Can Play That Game, Set It Off, and New Jack City. Johnson and his team were excited about bringing the cult classic comedy to theaters across the country, and Desselle was reportedly thrilled about the opportunity to revisit the character that had helped launch her career more than 20 years earlier. The timing seemed perfect for a B.A.P.S. stage revival, as the original film had gained even more appreciation over the decades and developed a devoted following among audiences who considered it an underrated gem of 90s comedy. Desselle had been actively involved in the planning and development of the production, working with Johnson to translate the movie's outrageous humor and memorable characters to the live stage format. According to Johnson, everyone involved in the project had fallen in love with Desselle's undeniably witty, always giving and caring, and hilariously show-stopping personality during the early rehearsal process. However, the COVID-19 pandemic forced the production to shut down before it could officially open, postponing what would have been a major career milestone for Desselle. Tragically, the delay proved to be permanent when Desselle passed away in December of 2020 after a private battle with colon cancer, at just 53 years old. Her death meant that audiences would never get to see her bring Mickey back to life on stage, ending what could have been a perfect full-circle moment for an actress who had brought so much joy to fans of the original film. Fact 14. Director's name hidden in plain sight. Robert Townsend couldn't resist leaving his mark on B.A.P.S. in the most subtle way possible, by sneaking his own last name into the very first scene of the movie where most viewers would never think to look for it. During the opening diner sequence, when Rudy Ray Moore appears as the customer named Nate who complains about his burned toast, eagle-eyed viewers can spot a small detail on his work uniform that reveals the director's playful sense of humor. If you look closely at Nate's uniform shirt, you'll notice that his name patch doesn't actually say Nate at Allen's Stead. It reads N. Townsend, which is obviously a reference to the film's director. This kind of hidden signature is a classic filmmaker trick that directors have been using for decades to put their personal stamp on their work in ways that only the most observant audience members will ever discover. Townsend's decision to use the initial N followed by his surname was particularly clever because it maintained the illusion that this was just a regular customer's work uniform, while simultaneously giving him a way to literally put his name in the movie. The placement of this Easter egg in the opening scene also shows that Townsend was thinking about these details from the very beginning of the film, planning out small touches that would reward viewers who paid close attention to background elements. The name patch Easter egg works especially well because it appears during a scene that already contains another major hidden reference with Moore's casting as the Dolomite actor, creating a layered moment that operates on multiple levels for different types of viewers. While casual audiences would just see a difficult customer causing problems for the waitresses, film buffs and detail-oriented viewers could spot both the blaxploitation legend cameo and the director's signature, making the opening scene much richer than it initially appears to be. Fact 15. Black China's bizarre revival. After the tragic loss of Natalie Desselle, the B.A.P.S. stage adaptation found new life in one of the most unexpected casting decisions in theater history, when Angela White, who was formerly known as Black China, was announced as the new star taking over Halle Berry's iconic role of Nisi. White shared the news with her 17 million Instagram followers in April of 2023, posting a photo of herself in costume and expressing her excitement about stepping into such legendary shoes. She wrote, "Wow, God is so good and everything that I've ever envisioned is finally all happening. I'm so excited to announce that I will be playing Nisi, the role that Halle Berry played in 1997. The casting choice was particularly surprising because White was primarily known for her reality television appearances and her high-profile relationships with celebrities like Rob Kardashian and rapper Tyga, rather than for any significant acting experience. Her fame had come mainly through social media and reality shows, making her transition to live theater an unexpected career pivot that caught many entertainment industry observers off guard. However, White seemed genuinely enthusiastic about the opportunity, announcing tour dates in major cities including Detroit, Los Angeles, and Atlanta, with additional shows planned for the fall touring season. The decision to cast White also represented a fascinating full-circle moment for the B.A.P.S. legacy, since the original film had been about characters who were dismissed and underestimated by mainstream society, but proved they had more depth than anyone expected. White's casting brought that same energy of surprising people and defying expectations, showing how the themes of the original movie continued to resonate decades later. Meanwhile, rapper and singer Inaya Lamis was cast to take over Natalie Dessell's Mickey role, ensuring that the production could finally move forward and honor the memory of the original film while bringing it to new audiences.